Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AI Powered Women podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Felicia Newhouse. I'm founder of the AI Powered Women Conference at MIT. And this is a space where women leaders come to navigate human centered AI with clarity, purpose, and care. Each week, we bring together diverse voices you won't find on a typical tech podcast, exploring how to integrate AI into your work without losing yourself in the process. You'll gain practical skills, fresh perspectives, and a deeper understanding of how to shape technology responsibly so it advances creativity, connection, and collective well being. And today's guest is Lauren Ducrey. Thank you so much for coming on today, Lauren. We're so excited to have you at MIT next month.
Thank you for having me today, and equally excited to come to Boston in September.
Yay. Can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. There's so many incredible women coming together for this. So it's really going to be it's going to be really interesting just seeing all the diverse voices and the topics, and I just really think it's going to be a very heart opening and very expansive experience, I think, for a lot of people. So I'm
I
looking
mean,
forward to seeing how it plays out.
I'm very, very hungry for it, I would say, to be able to bridge all the mind sparks, but also tap into the wisdom of the heart and the body. So thank you for bridging all three of
Yeah,
those.
absolutely. So, Lauren, let's dive in. So, you've been described as someone who bridges the worlds of tech and poetry, and you call yourself a poet technologist. And throughout history, poets, artists, and spiritual leaders have been our cultural truth tellers in times of chaotic change and disruption. And right now, we are definitely going through one of those times of change. So, I guess my question for you is, in an industry that's really obsessed with speed and efficiency and data and logic. What can poetry teach AI designers that no algorithm can? Why do you think this moment really calls for a more poetic approach to AI? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I have a very unorthodox belief that we are actually living through very poetic times. And I say
Mm,
that because when we're faced with huge amounts of uncertainty and chaos, everyday language tends to fail us. And when everyday language fails us, we reach for language that is more broad, more flexible. And that's where poetry comes into the picture.
mm,
And I like to think of it at an individual level. When do we reach for poems? Oftentimes, when we're overcome with grief or overwhelmed with really intense emotions like love. When you think about it, when do we read poems? At funerals and at weddings, because it's the
mm,
only type of language that can contain and convey what we're feeling when it feels too big for everyday language. And I've seen that
yeah.
happen in the tech and in the business world as well. I've seen folks at Google, where I spent 7 years working in AI, but also working with poetry to empower leaders and teams to connect more meaningfully. And now with Fortune 500 companies that I'm working with since leaving Google. And same thing in the face of recurring and unexpected layoffs, recurring reorgs, strategic shifts. People are grasping for new language to find purpose, meaning, and belonging at work. And
Mm,
that is what poetry teaches us. What I like to call poetic intelligence is the type of work that I bring into the workplace. And what poetic intelligence teaches us is the ability to transform uncertainty into curiosity, to practice deep
mm,
empathy, and to make meaning out of chaos. And I'll never forget participants at Google. I remember one participant leaving and saying, I haven't felt this close to other Googlers in a really long time. And then the
mm,
CEO of a big food and beverage company saying that his exec team was able to dive into strategic conversations so much faster because of the trust that we had established by working with the language of poetry for them to understand themselves, their teammates, and the bigger mission that they were collectively moving towards. So I like to say that poetry is the original language model and that it's a technology of
yeah.
communal meaning making, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the idea, and we talk about this at our conference next month a little bit too, is just this idea of ancient technologies and
Hmm.
ancestral intelligence um, in the context of AI, artificial intelligence. And I think that it's interesting that poetry's been around since the beginning of time, right? I mean, people have always been writing down words and trying to navigate really complex emotions if they can't do so otherwise. And even if you're not a poet, it's listening to the poetry, it's listening to the way we're constructing these words that allows us to open something up within us that can't always be done just through, standard human interactions and experiences. So yeah, it's really fascinating. And it makes me think, I mean, when we think about kind of workplaces right now and the how fast things are moving and how much change there is. People are afraid in the face of AI, and it's bringing up a lot of uncertainty. And I think a lot of the leaders right now, at least the ones I've worked with, many of them view AI as more of a purely technical revolution.
Yeah.
Um, and you've said before that you see it as more of a human revolution. I'd love to hear more about that. What's the most overlooked, I guess, human shift you'd say leaders need to make right now in the midst of all of this change?
This is the hill that I might die on, but to me, it is so, so, so obvious that digital transformation is human transformation first, right? You're getting your teams to adopt change. And one of the biggest shifts is that as AI takes over the more automated, the more systematic tasks that we have traditionally associated with work and with performance, our biggest advantage is our emotional intelligence. And the numbers are
Mm,
in on this. I am not inventing anything new. McKinsey reported that by 2030, so just 5 years from now, the demand for socio emotional skills like leadership, communication, creativity, we're going to increase by 14% in response to AI. So it won't be
yeah,
enough to be a technical leader. You will have to be the most emotionally intelligent technical leader in the room to really make a difference. And that's what companies, recruiters, and employees are going to be looking for when they're assessing whether to stay or to leave and go to work somewhere else. So, the literature on emotional intelligence and how it impacts the bottom line has been around forever, but I'm
yeah,
actually quite excited because I think now it's inevitable. It's not a nice to have, it's truly part of a company's strategic planning. And I think soft skills are becoming strategic skills.
yeah, yeah. That's a really great point, and it's such a good reminder as we kind of navigate this, I guess, this big transformation that a lot of leaders are going through. I'm not sure if all leaders are seeing that yet, but I mean, and the panel you're speaking on at the conference is called "Human Centered Businesses in the Age of AI and
Yes.
How to Build Them." Um, and I guess another question I have is just, what's the biggest myth around, what human centered actually means in practice? Because I'm hearing you talk about emotional intelligence and these skills that are needed. But I guess one, what does this human centered really mean? And two, um, you know, are leaders ready to hear that? Like, are they prepared to meet this moment? And if not, how do other people raise up the leaders? How do they shift them? Because we can point to these statistics, but how do we actually make this shift if our leaders aren't there yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think of this both internally and externally from an organizational point of view, and then from how you're designing your product from my years doing UX design. And so, if we start from
Yeah.
an organizational internal point of view, what I would say to that is if your business is truly human centered, are you using AI just to streamline and optimize processes? Or are you using it to unlock
Right.
your individual contributors and managers superpowers? Right, it's such a versatile
Mhm. Yeah.
tool. you can get so much personalized data without infringing, security. And my world is obviously language. So when I work with teams and I have them use large language models to practice empathetic communication, conversations, they can start to see like, oh, wow, I'm really good at asking follow up questions. I'm not so good at reflecting and validating, for instance. Once the leader starts to
Right.
see those things, right, you can start to really tease out, like we've done for ages with personality tests,
Mm.
right, where we're always trying to understand, okay,
Yeah.
who needs to work with who. We can just go 10x deeper into that insight so
Mm.
that you craft teams that aren't just efficient, but where people are really they're really in their zone of genius. And so they're also going to enjoy
Mm.
doing the work more because they will simply be better at it, and they'll be feeling like they're flourishing and they're using their full potential. And I think that's where leaders
Mm.
start to listen. It's like, oh, this could make my life easier as a leader. I could save
Mm.
time. I could be less in that kind of managerial puzzling of schedules of tasks and more in the vision, in the setting of the tone, in the growing my employees meaningfully, more in that truly
Right.
human part of
Yeah.
work rather than the kind of nitty gritty exhaustion of managers, right? For that are like spending hours writing
Yeah.
performance reviews. And I just don't, I've never had a
Exactly.
manager who enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, it's interesting to think of AI as kind of like this mirror too, right? Like I've been playing around with it too, especially with the memory feature of just kind of my blind spots too as a leader, as a person, right? And the areas I can, kind of evolve. And yeah, I wonder too if that can have a place, for more
Right.
formal and structured leadership and reflections. And you can start to have, each of us have our agent, and our agents can talk to each other, and start to do these, replace what these 360 assessments would do, but it's like a whole other level, right? So
Exactly.
it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Um, and so you've predicted the most successful leaders of 2026 won't be those with the most, AI certifications and credentials and AI expertise, but those who have mastered EQ and reading humans. So, how can AI actually be a training ground for emotional intelligence? Since you're talking about kind of some of those skills or assessments or learnings or reflections that these teams are going through. Talk a little bit more about that. And I know you've worked with some really large brands um, and kind of seen teams start to play around with this stuff. But I'd love to hear, either real use cases of teams you've worked with, or just, what you're seeing with that's trending right now
Yeah,
around how
happily.
teams are evolving.
Happily, happily. I two words come to mind, and those are role play. I think role
Mm,
playing
yeah,
with AI, it's emerging, and leaders in learning and development like Accenture are already very aware of that. But a lot of companies that I talk to and a lot of employees and managers have never thought to actually practice having important, sensitive, tricky conversations with AI. And so that's a very clear use
mm,
case. It's the one that I'm the most sought out for. And I will work with the team, ask them what kind of important conversation they need to have. And this can be at a team level, or it can be even individuals within the team, because that's the beauty of AI. We can then tweak the prompt. So I'll teach them how to prompt the model to essentially take on the role of the person that they need to have the conversation with, and then they have the conversation. So truly back and forth, like role playing. And
mm,
then they can even ask for feedback from the model. And in that part, I make it a practice of self awareness, saying that the model does not know you perfectly, right? So take that feedback
right.
as a mirror, as an invitation to take what resonates and to leave what doesn't, and then iterate, practice that conversation again and again. And I've seen people
Right.
wowed by how realistic that can feel and learn
Mm,
a lot about themselves, really start to notice patterns. We all have patterns in language, and the beautiful
yeah,
thing is that that's what large language models are built on, just on language patterns. So they're also really good at highlighting those for us so that we can actually break out of our own mechanistic tendencies with language and to start to
Yeah.
almost like learn, like discover our own voice. How is it that you want to communicate at work that sounds like you, especially for leaders? How do you want to lead? How do you want to inspire? How do you want to convey empathy, humility? It doesn't have to be one way now that you can get this really tailored practice and feedback. And what I love about role play as well is that it's very pro social in the sense that it's not replacing
Mm.
human interactions. It's actually opening up this space for practice that honestly didn't really exist before. I don't know about you, but I rarely practice
Mm.
conversations in front of the mirror. It's awkward. Asking a friend can even feel more vulnerable. So it's opening up this space that I think we were too shy to step into because there's that anonymity of the machine. Research shows people feel less judged if they practice with a machine. And so we're actually developing these human to human skills with AI without it replacing anyone.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean that will just get more and more effective as the voice features feel more natural too, right? In real
Exactly.
time conversation. And I've had quite a few people I've worked with that are therapists too that do this work in between their sessions with clients. And it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk, even just in the mental health circuit, around, oh, this is going to replace therapists. And the therapist like, actually, it's not going to replace the therapist. It it speeds up the rate of learning for people. And
Mm,
if you really zoom out of the human experience, I mean, what are we all here to do but to learn, right? We're here to learn as fast as we can and to get over those, stuck patterns like you talked about. And that's in work, that's in life, that's in all aspects of how we're trying to become better as individual humans and collectively. And so it's interesting to think about that, we can still work with these humans and have these touch points and have these,
yes.
deep drop in, collaborations. But in between those sessions, is what you're saying, is we can, still use AI to speed up that learning experience and then deepen it when we are in person, human to human, which I think is a really incredible opportunity if AI is used like that.
Yeah. I
So it's
mean,
really cool to see.
imagine walking into every conversation, maybe not feeling perfectly confident, but having just more confidence and less uncertainty
Yeah.
and anxiety and stress and winging again conversations that might make or break your day, your week, your month, like your career. These
Yeah.
conversations can have really deep impact. And when you take it into the
Yeah.
mental health space, it's, even more acute.
Yeah, and more self-awareness and accountability and compassion, and we can maybe all treat each other a little better. A
That's
lot
the
of this
hope.
goes back to like, what do they say? I know what I know what I don't know what I don't know, right? So it's
Exactly.
those blind spots that we can't see that we can try to hold each other up to our blind spots, but that can be hard. It can be really complex terrain to navigate, human to human, to hold people up to their blind spots that they're seeing, and they don't always listen to you. But maybe with in AI, there can be a different type of relationship and awareness that emerges there. So it's really fascinating to think about where that leads all of us.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so imagine it's 2030. What's one change you hope to look back on and say, we got that right in the AI era when that, AI stuff was happening and moving and shaking, we got it right.
Okay, it's gonna be hard to pick, but one that comes to mind is I think we all agree that in the medical field, AI is gonna be really helpful to take more administrative tasks off of the hands of doctors so that doctors and nurses
Mm.
can be more caregivers, right? And lean in again to that human and human to human care. I'm hoping that we'll look back in 2030 and be like, wasn't it wild as leaders and managers how much time we were spending on the admin, on the scheduling, on the program managing
Mm.
instead of what we do now, which is actually listen to our teams, help them grow, whether that's within the company or beyond it, and resolve conflict in constructive ways. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if that's what we get to say in 5 years from now?
Mm. I love that. Yeah, it's funny. It's like it really kind of comes back to this philosophical question of what is a tool? At any point in human history, what is a tool? And is it something to replace, to, lean on, to be a crutch, or is it something that is, a paradigm shifting mechanism to be better, to do better, to evolve. And so it's interesting to think about just kind of, yeah, how we rely on AI, like you're saying, and how is it um, calling us to be more, I guess, empowered in what makes us uniquely human and what
Yes.
makes us beautifully human.
Yes.
And that can take courage. It's not an easy task to look at these blind spots in ourselves and in each other and collectively as a society of where, we're not we're going astray, right? Like if you're a leader with a team, there's always something to look at where there's improvement or, something's not working. And it's not to be negative and look at all these areas that constantly need, optimization, but to look at, there's always an opportunity for us to, experience more success and more joy and more flow, more alignment, and doing that inside and outside of the workplace is powerful if we think about how AI can help us there. So
Yeah, and I definitely think
all right.
those
So,
tell me.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, in this work that I've done around communication skills, the resounding feedback is always that this goes so far beyond the workplace, right? That these skills of learning how to listen,
Yeah,
how to reflect, how to validate their skills. When I teach them in the mental health space, people are like, "Oh, but I could use this, with my whole family in the workplace." It's the same
right.
thing. So it's using work, which is this very sensitive place where people are feeling the real pressure of AI and the fear of job transformation, job replacement to enter into this space of more empathetic, mindful, courageous communication that ripples out far beyond the walls of the office.
Yeah, which if it's powerful and working, that's usually what happens, right? Because we're whole humans. We show up at
Exactly.
work, we're still the same person we were when we went
Yep.
home, and we showed up to the gym in the morning, and I mean it's all the same person. So it's good to know it's working when it hits all areas of the human. So if you had to write a single poetic line that would be engraved on the blueprint of every AI system we create, what would it say?
That is possibly the biggest question I've ever been asked. And these words are mine. There's again multiple that are bubbling up. Okay, I think it would have to be words by Mary Oliver from her poem
Love her.
Instructions on Living a Life. And the poem goes, "Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it."
Mm,
That's it.
love
Short and
that.
sweet.
Wow, that's powerful. Amazing. All right. Well, at the AI Powered Woman Summit, we're gathering next month, and we're so excited to have you. And we're going to be talking about, how AI can advance dignity, equity, human flourishing. And so we'll talk more about this on stage too. And Lauren, you're going to be sharing some of your own poetry there as well,
Yes.
right? So we're really excited to have that, just multi-dimensional aspect to the conference too, of we are learning about AI and we're learning about these tools and then we're diving into poetry. So what is one question you hope that attendees leave your panel still wrestling with when it comes to human-centered AI?
It's a question that I ask myself often, and it's, am I being lazy or am I being curious? And there's no judgment
Mm,
on either of those terms, but I use this as a way to check in on how I'm using AI when I do use it. Am I using it to delegate something that I don't wanna do that might, like, atrophy my ability to do it, or am I using it to broaden that ability? And sometimes delegating is fine. I will use it for, I don't know, email marketing because that is not my purpose in life, and I do not ambition to become an email marketer. So that's where I'm like, lazy? That's fine. But the curiosity part is where I get really, really excited, because I've learned so many new things that I'd never thought that I could do. I vibe coded a few months ago, and it blew my limiting beliefs out of the water, and it really changed my perception of what I'm able to do. So if you can lean into the curious and be aware of the lazy, to me, that's a guiding line for how I approach and interact with AI. So a question to leave the audience with.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. That's a good one to nibble on.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Well, thank you, Lauren. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for being here. And for everyone out there, if today's conversation gave you something to think about, share it with another woman leader who's ready to build with more courage, clarity, and heart. And subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Make sure you follow Lauren Ducrey on LinkedIn. And remember, the way we shape the future isn't by doing it alone, it's by leading it together. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.